Welcome to Entrepreneur News. I'm Lauren Rielly. I'm here with Joss Evans, the CEO of Innovic.
The term entrepreneur, just can I be clear on this, because I might use it differently from the way you would use it.
Yes.
How do you use the term entrepreneur? What do you mean by an entrepreneur?
Entrepreneur to me is the animal spirit, and it's the energy and passion within an individual. And so whether it's in the corporate environment and it's innovation, or whether it's an individual that's using their own resources.
Because when I use the term entrepreneur, and when we've used it in-house at Innovic, we differentiate between the innovator and the entrepreneur.
Ah, okay.
And so what we would say is how we would define it, you know, and this is the way we've always done it. So we would say the innovator is the person with the idea. So they've come up with an innovation. The entrepreneur, in a more formal sense, is the person that might take that idea to market. So they might be the investor. So we would differentiate. So we wouldn't say of the clients that we see, we wouldn't say they're all entrepreneurs. We would say they were innovators with ideas, but not necessarily entrepreneurs with the ability to commercialise those ideas. So we do make a distinction.
Well, that's really fascinating, because in entrepreneurship, and when I was speaking with Murray Gillen last week, he was saying that an entrepreneur may have the energy, the passion, the network and the knowledge. However, unless they actually implement an action and can do, he would not call them an entrepreneur. And when you're looking at the process or the term innovation, innovation includes the commercialisation opposed to the inventor or the ideator.
Well, that depends on your perspective on that as well, I think.
Yes.
I mean, I know when we use the term innovator, we're talking innovation, we're talking about, in the Lascelles matrix model, change that adds value. So that's what we mean by innovation, change that adds value. But the innovator, and I share Murray Gillen's view there, isn't necessarily the entrepreneur. So the innovator, whilst has some of those characteristics of the entrepreneur, isn't necessarily the person that will bring it to market. So that's how we differentiate. So just to be clear there, because
that's fascinating.
We might be talking about sort of two different aspects there.
In some of my research that I've been doing, there's actually no unified definition of what innovation is. And I found a definition in one of the government reports that came out, and it was very vague. For any country you go to, any academic you speak with, or people in industry, it is very different.
Well, I guess the two terms are often conflated. So innovation, entrepreneurship, it's seen as one and the same. I would argue that they're not quite the same, but nevertheless they share some characteristics.
So tell me the type of entrepreneurs or innovators you typically have come into Innovic.
Well, the typical innovator that we would see would be somebody that would have a new idea, tends to be at the early stage of the idea, is usually a very creative person, but probably doesn't have many business skills. That can change. Some people are very skilled, and there certainly are some people that are very capable of taking the idea right through the commercialisation process. But there are also others that are really just ideas people.
Yes.
And they don't want to be anything other than that. So they will need to get on board other people to help them with the commercialisation. So there's a whole range. When I first came to Innovic, primarily, I would have said probably 85% of the people we saw were men. They were men of a certain age. We do a lot of research into the sort of socio-economics background of the clients. They would be primarily, in those days, going back to the late 80s, in the 45 to 55 age group. That's changed over the years. Probably now we have something like 40% are female. They tend to be younger females, so they're not, and they could be anything from, say, 20 to 35. The sort of products that people come up with now has changed over the years, from the engineering, construction type products to the current range of things we're seeing are things like mobile phone applications, online services, web web type of products, and other types of personal services. So it's changed quite a lot. We still do see some of the heavy engineering things, but not as many as we used to. And there's also a lot of social enterprises.
Oh, yes.
And that's a big growing trend.
And so with Innovic, what's your core support that you give these people?
What we do at Innovic, we're a not-for-profit organisation. We provide support in terms of what do you do tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. So it's practical help. So it's not just advice and guidance, although we do that, but more particularly for people that don't have the time or the skills to commercialise their ideas, we can actually do it for them. So we will help with research, we can do patent searching, we help with mentoring, we look at the market for the product, we can advise on IP. We're not patent attorneys, but we can also source the relevant patent attorney for the client, go with them to the briefing, make sure they understand what they're getting into, and guide them right the way through the process, right to the stage of product launch, press releases, and writing the business plan.
Wow.
The only thing we don't have is money.
So how do you actually work? Do you charge people that come in here? Do you provide free services?
We provide some free services. Most of the free services are, we still do provide a lot of advice, because it's very hard to, when people ring up, it's very hard to say, look, sorry, I can't talk to you, you're not paying us. So we still provide advice. We also run a number of free seminars.
Yes.
We have run one just recently, last month, on growing your business online. That was so oversubscribed, we're going to do another one of that. We do seminars like grants and finance for new ventures. We also do things on commercialisation, IP, marketing, product development, business planning. And another seminar we're running later this year is an innovation toolkit for small businesses. And that'll be with Roger Lascelles, using matrix thinking.
Yes. So do you find education is one of the key help that you can give entrepreneurs?
Well, we've found through our surveys over many years that there are a couple of areas of real gaps in the marketplace. One is certainly education and skills development. People that are innovators and have good ideas often don't have the skills to move them forward. The second gap is time. People are time poor. They don't have the time to do all the work they need to do, and you know it's a long process to get the ideas into the marketplace, to connect with all the people they need to connect with. And thirdly, the other obstacles are money.
Yes.
Now, as I said, Innovic is a not-for-profit. We don't have money to give out to people, but we can help people in sourcing funds. We have a grant match service. We are well connected with the business angel community. We know where the grants are, and at any given time there are over 500 grants. Not easy to get, but we can put people in the best place to be able to access those resources and funds. So that's sort of the services that we offer. Practical, what do you do tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock? But I also stress that if the idea doesn't seem to be viable,
yes,
it really behoves us to tell the client up front where the flaws are.
How do you express that, and how do people take that?
Usually quite well. Over the years we've fine-tuned the process of telling people their baby is ugly. So basically we point out that we're going to be totally candid and honest with them. People like that initially until we start being totally candid and honest. What we try and do is say, look, this is the downside of this is where we believe the flaws are, and if we don't point them out to you today, somebody will further down the track. So let's address them head on. If you can't address them, for example, there are too many competitors in the marketplace, your price point is not going to make it commercially viable, or all the other issues that may come in, such as IP protection isn't possible, that for whatever reason, if we can point that out to people, usually they take it quite well. There will always be some people that say, but I'll prove you wrong.
Yes.
Now, for those people, well, what can we say? But what we try and do is say, these are the gaps, these are the flaws, address them before you spend any more time or money. What we want to do is to kindle the creative spark rather than extinguish it.
Yes.
So if people have got ideas, even if they're not good ideas in the first instance, and we can point out where the flaws are, the next idea that they have is likely to be better, and so on. So we want to encourage innovation. It's good for the country to encourage innovation and innovators, but we don't want them to spend time and money uselessly.
So
channel them.
Would you say that you helped the innovators develop over time, or do they usually come and see you once and that's it?
We deal with people over many years. So some of the clients that we're seeing today have been with us since we started in '86.
Wow.
So people come back. They have, it may be an idea that's taken a long time to get to market, and there are certainly some of those that would be 10 years in the process. Or there may be ideas that have evolved. So the idea that originally came in has changed, so they come back to us. Or it may be that the innovator now has a different idea. The first couple of ideas didn't work for whatever reason, but they're still continuing. Or they put it on hold for a while and then try and resurrect it when they've got more funds. So there's an ongoing relationship, and often it's quite a personal relationship. People get to trust people that they work with. In this innovation area, there's a lot of people that provide innovation services. They come and they go. So there's a company that starts one day, 18 months later they're gone.
So I was going to ask you about in terms of competitors in the marketplace, because when people are looking at the entrepreneurs and innovators at the early stage, there isn't a lot of money in it, and so it's often a gap or a neglected area for people to receive help.
Well, we've always said at the early stage, part of that early stage service is really a community service. If we want to make Australia an innovative, clever country, we need to support innovation.
Yes.
Now, to a certain extent, that would be a government role. And it has been in the past, where the Innovic, Victorian Innovation Centre, is one of 6 innovation centres originally set up as a state and federal government initiative in the 1980s. We were the last centre to be set up with government funding. They have all disappeared. We evolved into other things, and our government funded lasted for 20 odd years.
And not now?
Not now. So the government now has moved away from funding for early stage innovation. It directs its innovation focus elsewhere in the more high-tech type of areas, synchrotron, etc. So in terms of funding early stage innovation, there aren't many people in this space because, frankly, people that are starting out in business don't have very much money.